Las Vegas is no stranger to big concerts, but now the biggest night in music is coming here, and it doesn't end there. The big game itself is coming to Southern Nevada. The Super Bowl will be here in 2024. We examine the benefits and costs of hosting large events like the Super Bowl.
Support for Nevada Week is provided by Senator William H. Hernstat and additional supporting sponsors.
Welcome to Nevada Week. I'm Amber Renee Dixon. Las Vegas has long been known as the entertainment capital of the world, but now it could be called the event capital of the world. With the Pro Bowl and NHL All-Star Game last week, the Super Bowl in 2024, and in just a few months, the music industry's biggest night, the Grammys. Las Vegas is on the map for hosting big events, and joining us now to talk about the entertainment side of the equation is John Cancelled, entertainment reporter for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, better known as Johnny Katz, right?
And also known as that, yes. Commonly, yes.
Let's start with the Grammys. How big of a deal is this for Las Vegas, and why is Las Vegas getting the Grammys in the first place?
Well, why we're getting it is a result of the pandemic. You know, when the show was originally scheduled to be at Crypto.com Arena in LA in late January.
Formerly
the Staples Center. Yeah, we all know it as the Staples Center. Now it's Crypto.com Arena. And that was its home for years, the Grammys. And it made sense in LA. The center of the music industry is Los Angeles, at least in the western United States. So they figured that they were not going to be able to plan effectively with all the uncertainty about COVID and pandemic restrictions in the arena. They wanted to be able to move off Crypto.com and move the show later in the spring. The availability of Las Vegas came into play then, and they were starting to scout arenas in Las Vegas. And we have several, as you know, and they found MGM Grand Garden Arena was open in April. And so that was how it happened. They said, we would love to be able to at least host the show this year in Las Vegas until we sort out what's going on in Crypto.com Arena over the long term. They have a 2-year deal still at Crypto.com Arena, the Grammys, know this, that is after this year.
Okay.
So Las Vegas won't have the show for another 2 years after.
At least.
At least, yeah. That it has to be a Crypto, barring any of the unforeseen, for the next 2 years.
But should Las Vegas have hope that even after this,
yes,
the Grammys could come back?
Yes, because of our capacity to host major events, major award shows. The MGM Grand Garden Arena has hosted the Academy of Country Music Awards, Billboard Music Awards. Years ago, they hosted the ESPYs. Long ago, 20-something years ago. They've had things like the VH1 Divas show has been held in there, special events, boxing, mixed martial arts, all assortment of concerts and basketball games. It's a very versatile venue for televised events and televised award shows, MGM Grand Garden. So that's what appealed to the Recording Academy, which puts on the Grammys. They like that a lot. They would prefer in Las Vegas to be able to use T-Mobile Arena, which is more like Crypto.com than is MGM Grand Garden, because they have a bunch of suites in there. The suite situation in LA is very lucrative. They have those luxury suites and they sell them. I think they have like 170 something. And there's a bunch at T-Mobile Arena too, where you can make money and have all your big wigs be in there. MGM Grand Garden doesn't have that. They have these kind of VIP booths and boxes, but they don't have that kind of amenity. So what to look for is how the show plays out in Las Vegas for this year, and maybe set the stage for some long-term planning after it's finished its commitment in LA. Possibly with T-Mobile Arena if the Golden Knights aren't, it's hockey playoffs come into play.
Right.
T-Mobile Arena is a very busy place because they've got a host NHL team. But we'll see. I'm not ruling any of this out. My best information from people who really know this stuff is Las Vegas. This is going to be a test, the Grammy show on April 3rd, for Las Vegas civically, to see how it plays on TV and how the Recording Academy likes the show here. We're not a recording industry mecca,
right?
But we are a live entertainment mecca. We're a concert and production show mecca, headliner live show mecca. So the recording industry knows that, and that goes for the folks who come in from Nashville for the Academy of Country Music Awards. The LA crew comes in here all the time. They're here at events. They're performing, touring shows come here. The specific headlining shows come here. So we have a lot of music going on. I'm looking forward. I'm excited to see the Grammys here, not because it's going to be a cool show. It will be. It'll be great to have it here, but I'm excited for the city to be able to go through this sort of audition itself and show the Grammys what we can do. We can have cutaways, as you know, all over the Strip. Go downtown, you can have a live performance under the Fremont Street Experience and the Viva Vision. We know that. There's a lot of possibilities here.
So Las
Vegas
is going to get to prove itself.
Exactly.
For the possibility
Bring it on,
of,
they say. Yeah, you know.
How exciting. Talk about the Adele residency, which we cannot say has been formally canceled, but it's leaving so many people up in the air with tickets. We spoke off camera about if you got your tickets on the secondary market, you can't get a refund until it's officially canceled.
Exactly. And secondary market, folks, it's become more of a common term. It used to be kind of inside baseball, that term, but now it's more common, and that's StubHub, Viagogo, LasVegasTickets.com, all these brokers that obtain tickets from Ticketmaster in this case, which is the primary ticket seller for Adele. So Ticketmaster did what they called their verified fan system, where you got into a lottery and hopefully they picked you. You got in a couple days before the on-sale date, you registered, and if you were lucky enough to be called in, you had opportunities to buy specific tickets at specific times, and those tickets ran, up to $400 a piece. From $400 to about $1,000 face value a piece for Adele. That's the base ticket.
And through Ticketmaster, people were able to get their refunds, but everybody else.
Yeah, and when Adele canceled, if you booked your ticket through the verified system, you have up until a month after her postponement announcement, which was January 19th. You have until February 19th to get a full refund, if you were lucky enough to book through Ticketmaster. If you're like me, I did this. I went on Viagogo the day she announced that she was canceling. 3 hours before, or postponing 3 hours before, I was able to find a ticket availability on Viagogo, which I've never bought a ticket on before. I've gotten Wi-Fi on flights through Viagogo before. But I got on and got a ticket for like $280 total with fees and everything. I have an Adele ticket now for her opening night on the orchestra floor, a good seat for $280. And I was ecstatic about this. 3 hours later, she's crying on my Instagram feed about canceling the shows, and I'm in with all the other fans, wondering what's going to happen.
What do you know about what is going to happen, and do you accept her reasoning for the show being postponed due to it not being ready with the set?
Production? Well, what happens to the ticket holders in the secondary market is you have to wait for a formal announcement from either Caesars Entertainment, Live Nation, or Adele herself, or all three, that this has been canceled. These shows are not going to be performed. They're not going to be rescheduled at Caesars Palace. That has not happened yet.
Right.
And I made a call on this week.
It gives you hope?
It gives me, at least it's a tangible reality. It's where we are right now. The show has not been canceled. That's according to the people who do business inside the show, okay? So that, I don't know if it's encouragement, it's still a wait and see. But once it is canceled, I can obtain my refund through the secondary market. Now, to ask about Adele's reasoning, the longer this goes on, the less convinced I am this is an operations concern. Her argument, her statement was very convincing, very compelling. The crying and all that. I was with her. I felt terrible. She was not, whatever was going on with Adele when she cut that clip, she was not prepared to perform a live residency the next night.
True.
A headlining show, just obvious as a human being watching her. But for a show to have those kinds of operation problems, you would think that there would be a collective effort, everybody's eyes on the ball, hard focused. If we're having delivery issues, let's get that situated. If we're having problems in assembling a staff and assembling the stage, let's get on top of this right now and get this thing rebooked. That should be the top priority from everybody involved. And I don't see that kind of activity right now. I don't see that. And from what I've heard inside the show, there were a lot more mitigating factors about her response to what was going on that led to this, rather than half my staff has COVID and I can't get my costumes delivered.
Which, in your opinion, does that damage what Las Vegas is trying to do in returning to the entertainment level pre-pandemic by having one of these performers say it's all COVID related?
I don't know. I don't think it's a commentary on Las Vegas, because it's not a trend. It's specific to Adele.
But it doesn't benefit Las Vegas, is what I'm saying.
It's not great for Las Vegas to have this. I've called her one of the brass ring residencies. To have this all the hype, all the ticket, all the build up for it to be cut short is not is not good for the city. It's not good for Caesars Entertainment. It's not good for Live Nation. It, at the very least, causes a disruption in your operations when you're trying to do the entire residency lineup at Caesars Palace. So that it's not good that way, but this is an adaptable group. I know those guys, the folks at Caesars and the team at Live Nation, they can adapt really fast. This is not their first challenge by a long measure. You know, we've had other shows that have had to cancel. We had Britney Spears with Domination, if you remember that, over at Park Theater. That was cut down 5 weeks. The entire thing was canceled 5 weeks before it came out. I think they did okay at Park MGM and Park Theater, if you notice the bookings over there, what's now Live Nation, or Dolby Live, and I think they'll be fine at the Coliseum. I think that it's more a commentary on, I would say, in my opinion, in going all in with a single superstar like this over those specific dates. Adele demanded this schedule for a reason. She wanted to be the only headliner from January until April at the Coliseum. That's a huge ask, and she got it.
Too much. Thank you so much for coming in. We have run out of time, and Caesars could reportedly lose $150 million if these dates aren't rescheduled. Johnny Katz, thank you for your time. We move now to Super Bowl 56 between the Cincinnati Bengals and Los Angeles Rams. It is in LA this weekend, and in honor of it being the 56th Super Bowl, 56 nonprofits in the LA area will share a $1 million Super Bowl legacy grant matched by the Super Bowl host committee. The NFL says it's holding more than 30 charitable activities and community outreach events in the Los Angeles area for the Super Bowl alone, and that Southern Nevada can expect similar benefits when the big game takes place here in 2024. What the NFL accomplished here for the Pro Bowl, the league says, was just a preview.
1, 2, 3.
The NFL kicked off Pro Bowl week in Las Vegas with a revitalization project at Clark County Wetlands Park.
Whenever we come into a community like we are in Las Vegas for the Pro Bowl or a Super Bowl or a draft, it's certainly about the game on the field and all of those elements, but it's about what's important in that community and how do you leave a legacy in that community.
The legacy left here, 1,200 native plants and trees planted by volunteers and local students.
If I come back and I see the trees that they're a bit bigger, and I come back and see them, it's pretty cool because I know that I did that.
In order to improve this asset to Southern Nevada.
The vegetation here filters out pollutants from the Las Vegas wash that flow into Lake Mead, which provides the community with 90% of our drinking water.
Clark County Commission Chairman Jim Gibson sits on the Las Vegas Super Bowl host committee, which helped sell the NFL on holding a Super Bowl here. That committee is now responsible for fulfilling the NFL's many Super Bowl requirements.
I think the thing that startled me in our last host committee meeting was the number of volunteers. 8,000 or 9,000 people will be required in order to carry this off. We have people that will be just providing wayfinding inside the stadium, but outside the stadium, doing all that is required in order to get people in and get people out. It is not just a traffic control issue. It's so much more than that. And then you have all of the emergency services that will be required. It's all very large.
While Gibson and the committee gear up for 2024, the NFL plants seeds of encouragement. The Wetlands Project was just one of multiple community events the league held for the Pro Bowl, with many more expected for Super Bowl 58. The Pro Bowl, NHL All-Star Weekend, and the NFL Draft are without a doubt large and notable sporting events, but they cannot compare to the prestige of a Super Bowl. A couple of months ago, Las Vegas learned that it would get to host the big game in 2024. It's an opportunity that comes with a lot of responsibility, though. The NFL requires a lot from its Super Bowl host city, and joining us now to talk about that is Jeremy Aguero, Chief Operations and Analytics Officer for the Las Vegas Raiders. Welcome, Jeremy, but that title is relatively new because for the past 24 years, you were a principal analyst with Applied Analysis, a well-known economic, fiscal, and policy research firm here in Las Vegas. You also sit on the Las Vegas Super Bowl Host Committee, which is responsible for implementing all of the requirements that the NFL has for its host city. Let's start with the benefits of hosting a Super Bowl. In the story that we just ran, we saw that there is a tremendous impact on the community and community events. But outside of that, what are some of the other benefits?
Look, I think there's all kinds of benefits, right? We can talk about them in terms of economic benefits, jobs created, wages and salaries for people that work in our community. We talk about businesses that are engaged as a result of the Super Bowl. We talk about them in terms of fiscal impacts, right? Taxes that are generated because people stay in our hotel rooms. By the way, those hotel rooms are going to cost a little bit more during the Super Bowl, right? We talk about it in terms of social impacts, what you just mentioned. But I think sometimes it's often forgotten in that whole conversation is what we're doing right now, talking about the Super Bowl coming to Las Vegas, right? This is a community that was designed to host people, right? You think about Allegiant Stadium built during COVID-19 crisis, what it means to show it being open, what it means to advertise Las Vegas all over the world, right? The most watched television program we could ask for, highlighting not only two incredible football teams playing a premier contest in our community, but highlighting our community here in Southern Nevada all over the world. There is tremendous value to that. You add that to the jobs and the wages and salaries, it's a huge benefit for our community.
You mentioned jobs. About how many do you think will be created from the Super Bowl alone?
Well, look, I mean, based on preliminary estimates, we think it's going to be in the tens of thousands of jobs that are going to be created even for that event. We're talking about, economic activity somewhere between $500 million and $1 billion associated with a single event. And of course, it's not just a single event, right? It's not just the Super Bowl that's played on Super Bowl Sunday. It's all the things that lead up to it, the fan experiences, the concerts, the activations that we're going to have up and down the city. I'm willing to bet you, as we sit here right now, that it'll be the single largest economic event that we've ever had in Southern Nevada.
Those jobs, though, they would be considered seasonal or part-time.
There's no doubt about that. I mean, they're obviously not going to be full-time jobs, and we kind of need to see where exactly they work. But when we think about all the planning that goes up to have that Super Bowl, they're a lot more than just a job that's going to be over a weekend, for example. We're talking about lots of jobs created over a relatively extended period of time. The NFL starts already in terms of its planning. The host committee starting already in terms of planning. Matter of fact, already have hired an executive director for the host committee. Those things are already taking place. And when you see something like what just happened in our community in terms of the Pro Bowl and all the lead up and all the community activations that went around that, I mean, that's just scratching the surface for what we're going to do for the Super Bowl.
You mentioned the $500 million economic impact, but then perhaps you said up to $1 billion. But if we stick with that $500 million, which is based off of past Super Bowls and their impact on the cities that they've been held in, you got to factor in the cost, though, of putting on a Super Bowl. And recently, the LVCVA agreed that $60 million is what this is going to cost. The host committee agreed upon that. Before we get into where that money comes from and what it is going to be spent on, I want to ask you about the impact that already happens here in Las Vegas when there is a Super Bowl outside of Las Vegas.
Sure, it's a great question.
I mean, so 2019, according to the Review-Journal, Super Bowl brought 310,000 visitors to Las Vegas, resulting in an economic impact of $425 million, according to Applied Analysis, where you used to work for. So then you take the $500 million estimate, you subtract the $60 million in costs, and we're back to around that level.
Yeah, no, unfortunately we're not. I mean, the $500 million estimate is net new on top of what we had previously. We've already adjusted for what we would lose in terms of compression or loss in terms of that. So I think the number is actually going to be substantially higher than where we were before. Now, you make an excellent point, right? We had 310,000 people in town for the Super Bowl, and we didn't even have the Super Bowl here. So
you didn't have to pay for anything.
Exactly, but the average visitor that comes to Las Vegas generates about $850 per person per trip. The average person that's going to come around the Super Bowl, the average activity, is going to be 3, 4, 5 times that amount in terms of that spending profile. The amount they're going to spend in terms of special events, the amount they're going to spend in terms of parties and meetings and all the things that go around Super Bowl will be astronomically higher. Andy Abu, during the Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Committee, we were really in the infancy stages of just thinking about building a stadium and bringing it. He sort of mentioned, and when people would ask this question about, essentially a rising tide lifting all boats and what it means to be a Super Bowl city. That has always stuck with me. And when you talk about all of those resort partners, MGM and Caesars and all those executives that came up to the legislature and talked about how important it was to have a stadium for exactly events like these, right? We have 150,000 hotel rooms. We have upwards, depending on how you calculate it, about 300,000 leisure and hospitality employees. When we talk about the importance of events like this and people making that incremental decision, not only to come to Las Vegas during a weekend like this, but to spend and do the type of things they're going to do, whether that's on the corporate side or the individual side, it's not even a comparison in terms of what we had previously.
So you're saying the Super Bowl visitor spends a lot more money than the Super Bowl visitor that was coming just to watch the game on a TV. What do you think about how much money they're going to be spending gambling? Because that is always important to the casinos.
Without a doubt. But gambling makes up such a lower amount in terms of the total amount of revenue that's generated on the Las Vegas Strip. 10, 20, 30 years ago, it was more than 50% of the revenue that was generated. Today, it's about 30% of the amount that's generated for those large hotels and casinos. Today, much more of that revenue comes from room revenue. Much more comes from food and beverage, retail, for example. Entertainment makes up a larger share. So when we have folks that are coming to Las Vegas and they're spending that money in various different ways, that generates a lot more money and creates the diversity that we need inside of our tourism industry to make it as vibrant as it is today.
$60 million is what the host committee believes this is going to cost. $40 million of that is coming from the LVCVA. $20 million is going to be done in fundraising. Now, the LVCVA gets most of its money based off of hotel room taxes. When this was brought to the LVCVA Board of Directors, Steve Hill, the CEO of the LVCVA, broke down the expenses, what makes up that $40 million. And there's a lot that goes into it. The Fan Fest that you mentioned, a media center for the thousands of members that come from all over the world. But why are these costs put on the host city? Why does the NFL not pay for them?
Well, look, because I think the host city benefits tremendously. I mean, you and I just talked about $500 million worth of impact, maybe as much as $1 billion, depending on how we calculate it, all of those type of things, right? We've talked about all the ancillary benefits in terms of the media exposure and those type of things, right? There is a tremendous cost associated with that. There's also a tremendous benefit associated with it, which is why cities all over the place vie to have the Super Bowl come to them.
There was an example, Glendale, Arizona, in 2015, its mayor said, I'm not really all that excited about having the Super Bowl here again, because back in 2008 when it was here, we spent more money. We actually lost about $1 million. We spent about $3.4 million, mostly on public safety, only got about $1.2 million in tax revenue from what was spent at hotels and restaurants. So is this different, though, in that the LVCVA is paying for public safety? Because there is $3 million allotted in that budget.
Look, there's a couple of things there that I think are important. There's no doubt that it's different here than it is in other places, right? The LVCVA is funded through room tax revenue primarily, and so essentially it's those visitors, all those visitors, some that will come that weekend and others, that are offsetting this cost. But I think it's much more important than that. I've heard this argument all the time, particularly when the stadium was originally being constructed, that the economic benefits were not going to offset the amount of the cost that we, the public, were putting in to that project. And there's no doubt that those things, the economics around that is very different outside of Las Vegas. I can't speak to Cleveland or Glendale or those type of places. But what I can tell you is when we look at all NFL stadiums, all arenas around the United States, if we look at the percentage of the people that are sitting in any seats for those venues, we look at any of them, they're going to have somewhere between 3 and 5% that are going to be out-of-town visitors over a normal year. For us, that number is in excess of 50% today that are out-of-town visitors. Every one of those trips translates into jobs. Every one of those trips translates into business activity that's happening with our community. We are the only economy in the entire United States that was built and designed to host people. We have to find ways to do that effectively. If we're going to welcome 42 million people every year, we better find a way to make sure they stay entertained.
Well, and it certainly would make me feel better as a Las Vegas resident knowing that I'm not personally paying for the public safety at the Super Bowl. It is on the backs of the visitors, correct?
Yeah, look, I think so. Look, is there going to be some cost? Sure. There's going to be some costs that are borne by all of us. I suppose if you stayed in a hotel and you generated some room revenue, you'd be contributing to many of the things that the LVCVA does. But I think sometimes we forget just how important our tourism industry is to us, and that it's all of our responsibility to contribute to that. Now, you bring up a really important point in terms of public health and public safety. Obviously, there needs to be a shared cost in that, and the venue should make sure that it's contributing, and the event should make sure it's contributing. And let me tell you, they do. right? I mean, there's a huge expense. Let's be clear that the cost of putting on a Super Bowl is substantially greater than the cost that we are going to be contributing overall in terms of the public sector.
And it is certainly long overdue in this city, a Super Bowl. Jeremy Aguero, thank you so much for coming in. And thank you, as always, for joining us this week on Nevada Week. For any of the resources discussed on this show, please visit our website at vegaspbs.org/Nevada Week. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Nevada Week.